Morning, all. Happy Friday, I guess. Normally it would be Happy Friday, but here we are. We're a week out from Christmas, and there's still no news as of yet. And I want to start off by saying this is the best Vegas jersey. Of the four they've had, including the third they just revealed about a month before this one, I think this is the best one they've had. And I always thought that it'd be nice to have the secondary on the front of a jersey, and I'm right. It's the one that my wife and I talked about years ago. So for fans in Vegas, you guys know anytime we've talked about what Vegas could do for a third jersey, this is it. And I think it looks pretty sharp. And I understand this is one of those reverse retros that isn't selling really well. I think that's crazy. I honestly, this is a nice one. And it is available numerous locations. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this. Edmonton and Toronto. So they, of course, were the hubs for the NHL for the playoffs, play-ins, then the round of 16 and beyond. Now, it is possible that we see all the Canadian teams play in either Edmonton or Toronto. Now, if the players had a vote on it, from word after all of it was said and done, they'd rather play in Toronto. The hub in Toronto was seen as a more enjoyable experience than the one in Edmonton. Now, I don't know that that's going to necessarily go to a vote, but apparently the NHL has been in discussions with both cities again. And so the idea of using them as a hub, it's come in. Now, the idea of, well, you could have a Western Canadian and Eastern Canadian hub, that really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense because then you're going to have 4 in one and 3 in the other. You're going to run out of games. You're going to be going back and forth. You're better off to have all 7 teams in one hub. So I'm going to go ahead and predict it to be one hub. And there's no guarantee that teams are all going to be in their home rinks for this season in the States either. There's been discussions about whether or not they may need hubs to start the season, and I've said this the whole way through. I'm sorry that it is repetitive, but I really felt like scheduling this like a month at a time, even 2 weeks at a time, and just have them in hubs, and then as soon as it's feasible, you can all go to your home rinks. I think that situation would be the not necessarily the best for broadcasters, not necessarily the kind of certainty the NHL and their players would want, but I think it's most realistic given the current situation. So we'll see whether or not Edmonton and Toronto are named, or I should say Edmonton or Toronto are named, and Vegas is also on that list if they decide to go that route as a city that they could use as a hub. It's possible. Now, one question is, will the Canadian teams play in the U.S. all year? So let's just say the hub falls through. They say, all right, we're not going to do that. We're going to put them all in the U.S. I will say this. It's easier to put them in a hub than to stick them all back in the U.S. and try to find a spot for all 7 teams and figure out all the scheduling. The whole idea of, well, they could share a building with, then you're going to have double headers in those buildings. You're going to have, it's not a preferable situation. So if teams aren't in Canada for, let's say, the first month of the year, but they're still looking at coming back during the year, that would preserve the Canadian division. The Canadian division doesn't happen in all likelihood if they end up in the States, unless Rogers makes an argument for broadcasting, or the NHL says, you know what, for broadcasting reasons, it makes sense to put the Canadian teams all into one division. But they're not all going to be in the same spot. So the whole idea of having just teams playing other teams in their division is to limit travel, limit risk. You're not going to be able to completely destroy the risk, but you can limit the risk, and that's what they're looking at. That's what they're trying to do, and it is a challenge. That being said, there's not going to be a vote today. There's not. Pierre LeBrun's not seeing one coming. Elliot Friedman's not sure. I'm going to go ahead and say, nah, there won't be a vote today. The NHLPA is having a conference call today with all their reps to let them know what's going on. And again, we don't have an announcement, which means that, yes, as of now, because now we're pushing to January or to December 21st at the earliest, and then we're into Christmas week, right? I'm going to go ahead and say, the January 13th date does become more unlikely now because we're not getting a vote this week. This was the key week. And so you push back from that in all likelihood, and you probably end up with a 48-game schedule. Right? So I swear to God, if they end up getting to exactly what we all kind of had thought would be the most likely scenario, it's just going to be so frustrating. But yeah, the further it's pushed, it makes sense. So for people who are saying, well, why would the NHL push back? NBA's back. The NBA does not rely on gate receipts like the NHL does. The NBA has a great TV agreement. The NFL, great TV agreement. Major League Baseball, great TV agreement. NHL, no. They do not have the lucrative TV deals that the other major leagues in professional sports have. So yeah, the NBA, yeah, you guys can go back and play, and it's fine. We lose gate receipts, which will hurt. But there has also been concessions made by unions other than the NHL that the NHL union hasn't really made, where your salary cap might be dropping in other leagues. So, like the NFL, it's rumored the salary cap's going to drop for next year because of not having fans in attendance this year. Whereas the NHL's trying to keep the salary cap the same and then claw back the money in ways that, honestly, I don't understand why they didn't just drop the cap. It would have been so much easier. And prorate salaries. You have to prorate the salaries when you drop the cap. But the further back you push this, let's say you push it to February 1st. Let's say you push it, let's just be crazy, February 15th. They start the season February 15th. And everybody's like, why are they starting? This is ridiculous. You have a greater chance of having fans in attendance. You have a greater chance of playing games where fans will be there, where you have the ability to get back some of what you lost. The players can get back more of their money faster, and the league makes more money in the long term. So it's possible, and then what that would do, and what I think Bettman would push back against is it would probably push next season away from an October start and probably more towards a November or a December. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to be pushing back the start of next season. They want the 2021-2022 season in place. But they can't just cancel this season because, as I've said previously, then the NHLPA can potentially take them to court and say, they're locking us out. They're not paying us and they're locking us out. And then what happens to contracts? You're not paid and you're gone. What happens to all those bonuses? Well, those are guaranteed. So there's a lot of reasons why we won't just see a cancellation and them saying, oh, we'll come back next year. It's not that easy. It just isn't with unions and contracts and all that other wonderful stuff. There's nothing simple about this. And that's where Seattle, as an expansion team coming in 2021, that may change some things too. There might be teams that would have had it where they didn't want a player to be eligible. Now he is. That kind of thing. So, and there were ways. Oh, he was injured. Kind of. So, he's not eligible. He's injured. Put the cast back on. So, the NHL, a lot of red tape, I would think, to go through. 8 German team members and 2 Swedish staff members have tested positive on arriving in Edmonton for the World Junior Championship. Yay! All right, so the German team's in quarantine until Christmas Eve, and then they play Team Canada on Boxing Day. So that's great, right? And the Swedish team is in quarantine until the 21st. I'm guessing the difference is because it was 2 Swedish staff and not 2 Swedish players. The German team, it was 8 players. So, at least that's what I was reading. It's 8 team members. I guess it could involve staff as well. Basically, about a third of the German contingent. The thing that I find interesting is, weren't a lot of these teams on the same planes as one another? Like, they didn't all come in separate planes. So, yeah, let's hope that bubble holds. Because here's the thing. Let's just say that we have an outbreak at the World Junior Championship and we don't end up having the World Junior Championship. That's going to hit, basically, health authorities will look at that and go, well, now I don't know if we can have an NHL bubble where there's going to be more people, because we just saw with the World Junior Championships, and I assume it'd be more people to bring in the NHL than to bring in junior teams, even though you'd have less NHL teams coming in than junior teams. I don't know. Maybe that changes the health officials' minds on whether or not to be able to have a hub. It's basically a mess. So here's to hoping that that's the last hiccup in this process. There have been players testing positive throughout, and now going into the bubble, hopefully everything's going to be okay. Speaking of Alberta, Calgary Flames have extended Shillington's contract by 1 year. It's a 2-way deal, but at the NHL level, he'll make $787,500. I like Shillington. Shillington's a guy that I think, good depth defenseman. And if they're in a position where they might lose him in an expansion draft, I could see Shillington being on the move. Maybe he ends up in Vegas. Vegas doesn't have to worry about the expansion draft. Could probably use another young defenseman, right? So, yeah, Shillington signs a very team-friendly deal. That gets done. That's one more restricted free agent off the board. Speaking of Vegas, Coach Peter DeBoer sees the realigned division, his division, as a group of death. Now listen, Mr. DeBoer. Listen. The group of death is the division in the East with all the really good teams in it. You can make the argument of whether or not Buffalo and New Jersey, maybe the Rangers are going to be off by a little bit. But the division that has been proposed is Vegas, Dallas, Colorado, St. Louis, who all are seen as contenders. I would have an argument against Dallas being a contender only because of Bishop and Sagan being out for as long as they're going to be out. But then you have Arizona, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim. I can't see Vegas finishing below any of those four teams. So at the very worst, they're a playoff team. At the very best, they're still probably first in the division. I think Colorado will give them a run. I think St. Louis will be tough. And Dallas proved in the playoffs they can hold their own against Vegas, but they're still a playoff team. So to me, group of death means you might be fifth place in the division and miss the playoffs, but you'd be third in another division. That to me says you're in a group of death. I don't think this is what this is, but hey, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. Just tapping upon this video. And again, I do wish I had better news a week before Christmas. I do, but at this stage, we'll see. And I'm tracking how long it's going to be until the entry draft in all likelihood takes place, and trying to figure out, okay, so if I have to fill that many days in between now and the draft. So that's been on my mind for months, as patrons and members would tell you. I've done videos on that for members and for patrons as well. So, yeah. Anyways, there you go. And patron and then member videos are always ad-free. There's no ads on those ones. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. Hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already, and I will talk to you again soon.